Tonight's topic: Rasta and white women, the unholy alliance. What does it mean to be a Rasta? What is a Rasta? I can guarantee you that if you ask 100 people, you are sure to get 100 different answers. Responses may range from a political ideology about black nationalism. Some may say it's a focus on spiritual enlightenment. Some will tell you about vegan food, ital food, eating from the land, planting what you eat. Others will talk about black revolutionary principles like Pan-Africanism. And of course, we can't forget those white hippie notions that have bastardized songs like One Love into a hippie anthem and turned its author into a dreadlocked version of Jesus Christ. No matter the answer that you will get or we will get, nothing will change the history and foundational tenets of Rastafari. From the great Pan Africanist call from Marcus Garvey that beckoned, look to the east for the crowning of a black king, and the subsequent deification of this king, Haile Selassie, to the teachings of Leonard Howell, who everyone knows and regards as the first Rasta, the original gang. It is undoubtedly a movement rooted in black pride, anti-colonialism, repatriation, and a black God. Try as they may, the sentiments expressed by Bob Marley in countless interviews about the fact that Ethiopia is the ancestral home of the Rasta man and woman is forever etched in history. So whether you like it or not, Rasta is and has always been a black philosophy. But then that begs the question, how did Rasta earn this reputation? The reputation of being the group of men that are most likely to pair with, marry, or impregnate European women, Caucasian women. Have you heard the saying, wherever there is a Rasta man, a white woman is not far behind? Doubtful? Go to any gathering where Rasta is likely to attend in large numbers. There is always a group of white women. Check out your favorite Rasta musician, your Rasta businessman. He has a white wife in many instances. And those who have enough shame because of their Rasta philosophy not to marry or publicly date white women, they have them as their managers, their promoters. She is always in their entourage. So, what is this about? Is this an extension of the larger trend of conscious black men, pro black men, who have historically loved and expressed their preference for white women? People like Sheikh Anta Diop comes to mind, illustrious Egyptologist, anthropologist from Senegal, who was married to a French woman, Harry Belafonte. Danny Glover, say what you want about Danny and his questionable roles in movies. In terms of his private life, he has always preached that he abides by pro-black philosophies. I can see this as nothing else but treachery. Treacherous for so many reasons. Black men are the most critical of black women. You hear the fire Rastaman burn on Falls here, Falls Neil. Black woman in a short shorts. The same Rasta man who would marry his enemy's daughter. Not an enemy we have identified by ourselves, that he has said is his enemy. He has said colonialism is his enemy. He has said the white man is his enemy. Treacherous because of our history. Black women, unlike any other race of women, have always been on the battlefield beside their men. We were hosed alongside our men. We got bitten by dogs. The incident that was spearheaded by Bustamante's call to bring in all Rasta, dead or alive, in Coral Gardens, Montego Bay. There were Rasta women there that were getting cat-o'-nine in their backs, that were being arrested, that were being thrown in cells and trimmed alongside black men, alongside black Rasta men. It's treacherous because of the state of our community. How many reggae labels, reggae promotional companies are owned by white women, managed by white women? We don't even own reggae. It's a disgrace. The current generation of the Marley family doesn't have a drop of black in it. 50 years from now, Marley will be back to the original Marley, a white Jew. Tough Gang International is headed by Ziggy Marley's white Jewish wife. It's treacherous because of the sacrifices black women have made. What is this pathology associated with being pro-black and pursuing the daughter of your slave master? You don't want the religion of your slave master. You don't want his food because you say ital. You don't want his system of government because you burn Babylon. You only want his daughter. Can't make this up. So tonight I want to look at this in depth. We can question it. We can dissect it. Perhaps you may wish to challenge this view. Why is it? Is it self-hate? Is it misogyny? So I invite you all to be part of this discussion. We want it to be as robust as possible. Feel free to share your views. Feel free to be as passionate as you would like. Thank you to all for joining. And just a note, at the beginning of this, I played a song by Curly Locks. Sorry, by Jacob Miller. The title is Curly Locks. Now, some people might question whether this song is about a white woman, because he didn't specifically say it was about a white woman. But a few things we do know. Number one, the song was co-written by a certain Lee Scratch Perry. If you know anything about Lee Scratch Perry and who his wife is, you may start to question whether or not this is about a white woman. Also, there is another song that is written also by Jacob Miller. The song is called Susie Wang. Written, well, I'm not sure who wrote this one, but it's performed by the same artist, Jacob Miller. I'm just going to read a few lines from the lyrics. I took a trip to the China Way, said I'd just stay a day. To my surprise, there to see another love there for me. Susie Wang, she's a lover. Her world are hot to discover. Susie Wang, she's my baby. I don't think I'm crazy. Susie Wang, she always follows me wherever I go. Onto the circus and the movie show. I always wonder why she loved me so. But I can't tell you, only Susie know. Susie Wang, she's a mystery. First love I ever had in history. I'm gonna repeat that line. This is a Rasta man who is singing about a woman named Susie Wang that he met in China. Susie Wang, she's a mystery. First love I ever had in history. Susie Wang, she's my baby. I don't think I'm crazy. And the song goes on in the same vein. So I don't think it's far fetched that Jacob Miller and Lee Scratch Perry, who is married to a white woman, made curly locks for a white woman about a white woman. Anyway, I'm going to kick it off with Miss Sasha, Caribbean Mystic. Sasha, welcome, sis. What do you have for us this evening? I'd love to hear your thoughts. There is a,
Yeah, sorry,
yes,
I
you,
couldn't work it
that's
out.
okay.
Hi. How are you, first of all? You good?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for joining.
Wonderful. You're welcome. I just one thing that comes to mind that there's so much to unpack, first of all. So you asked in your opening, you said what is Rasta? And I don't think that we have truly come to a kind of like formalized general consensus. And I don't think it's necessary for us to. I think that's one of the appeals of Rastafari, that ultimately, you know, it it's freedom. That was essentially, I think, at the basis of every aspect of the political ethos, the spiritual ethos, is freedom. And I think sometimes that this same freedom gets lost in translation. Um, how did Rasta earn this reputation? You asked, of being with white women. I think that it's the same thing we see, with the athletes and the white women, and you know the way that we see white women portrayed in Hollywood, in terms of how they would, often be looking at the black man, you know, in a sexual manner. So obviously they're fetishizing um, black men, and a lot of people are, they're under the impression that white women aren't able to be racist and be with a black man. But this isn't so much about the white woman's pathology as it is the black man's pathology. And so I think it's just, I think it's safe to draw attention to what black men have been fighting for, particularly in the United States. So I'm trying to think of what, yeah, I think in 1883, there was a court case, Pace versus Alabama. So Tony Pace, he's a black man, and then his girl was called Mary Cox, and she was a white woman, and they were arrested in Alabama in 1881 for violating the state's anti how do you say that word, beginning of miscegenation. Am I pronouncing it correctly? It basically prohibits interracial relationships. So they were charged with the crime of fornication and adultery, and obviously they received harsh penalties because of the political climate of the time, and this particular case, it eventually reached the US Supreme Court, where Pace argued that the Alabama law violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court upheld the Alabama law, ruling that the statute did not violate the Constitution because it applied equally to both races. We also, I think there was another case. This was early on in 1681 in Colonial Virginia, and this case was Hugh Davis. You know, again punished for wanting to be with a white woman. Actually, I think it's was it Peter and Mary's case? Anyway, I digress. The point is that when we look into history, we can see that black men have been continuously fighting to have sex and to partner with white women. And it's a simple explanation is that I don't think that we have studied the pathology of black men, particularly as it pertains to internalized racism. As you mentioned in your introduction, you spoke about the critique that men make towards black women in terms of the way it's particularly Rasta men. I'll briefly tell you about something that happened to me. I think I've mentioned it to you in one of our private conversations that I was in Falmouth, and essentially I was with a friend who identifies as Rasta, a female friend, and she had a shop where she was selling food and alcohol and things like that, and there was a building on the side where Rasta men would come and chant and play the bingy drum, but I believe that they were part of Baba Shanti. So I walked in there. I'm hot. I'm not climatized yet. I live in England majority of the time. So I didn't have on a bra, but I was covered, and my skirt wasn't like, explicitly short, but they found that offensive. So I mentioned this because you mentioned misogyny. So I feel that there are a few different things going on here. I believe that yes, that there is misogyny, and I believe that you know black men essentially need to really be introspective and be honest when evaluating the way it is that they feel about themselves, because ultimately, if you love yourself, then you want your children to then be a reflection of yourself. If you love yourself, you want your wife to be a reflection of yourself. But I could go on. I'll allow the conversation to kind of like happen organically, but I'll hand it back to you. Thank you for the floor.
Thank you for that, Sasha. Leonard Howell, in his many writings and speeches, gave Rastafarians 6 principles. This was in 1933. 1. Hatred for the right race. 2. The complete superiority of the black race. 3. Revenge on whites for their wickedness. 4. The negation, persecution, and humiliation of the government and legal bodies of Jamaica. 5. Reparation to Africa. 6. Acknowledging Emperor Haile Selassie as the supreme being and only ruler of black people. Many people, because of the bastardization of Rasta into a hippie movement, many people tend to forget what Rastafari's early foundational principles was about. And I'm interested in the comment that Sasha made about Rasta being about freedom. And I'm of the view that that's a very recent development and interpretation of what Rasta is. Even if you listen to early interviews of Peter Tosh uh, and many other of the like, there is no free for all, quote unquote, in the concept of being a Rasta. The principles are very clear and the principles are very strict. And the principles are rooted in Black first philosophies. Leighton, thank you for joining us this evening. Has Rasta transcended race? Has Rasta transcended its Black first philosophies? Is it now a freedom movement? What's your take?
Um, I I find it funny when Sasha mentioned freedom, but she's not free to go braless and with a shortish skirt. So Rasta have all kind of strictures and unfreedom. Rasta man just want to be free to have white woman. And why should Rasta be different from any other Pan-Africanist fighter, warrior, leader? Um, One of the perks of which is it's like the more prominent Pan African male you are, the more entitled to a white woman. And I don't think it is pathology with Rasta. I think it is a black man, I was gonna say black diaspora, African diaspora man, but we see examples all over the continent of the same. So I think it's a black man issue, a deep, embedded core, like what's this thing them called epigenetics, where something embed itself into your DNA before you come on this earth by virtue of the pressures where ancestors or whatever ancestors come under. I really think it's something like that, a primordial, deep, deep thing where they have to, especially at a particular point in their life, get a white woman, have a white woman, marry a white woman, breed a white woman. I think it only is more striking in the case of Rastas because it was so obviously an anti-white philosophy. And I think that's part of the reason why, as you mentioned, Kishi, I think that's part of the reason why things have morphed into this. Rasta is about personal freedom and actualization and, that kind of thing. 'Cause that leave you free now to have white woman and still be a real Rasta.
I take the point that it's something that we see with black men in general, black men who are wealthy, black men who are Pan Africanist, black men on the continent. But it's particularly glaring for me with the Rasta community because if a Pan Africanist man is a Christian, he can do the whole "we are the world" argument. We're all one under God's sight. God doesn't see one of his children any different from the other child. Religion makes room for that kind of philosophy. Also, no other spirituality currently practiced in the West for the past 100 years really takes into account the wife of the deity or of the head of the religion. So Al Rastaman hail Empress Menen, and she's a core part, even if it's just representation only. She's a core aspect of what the faith looks like. So when you come from a black prophet like Marcus Garvey, who also tells you in his book, philosophies of Marcus Garvey, philosophies and opinions of Marcus Garvey, makes it explicitly clear that black people should not sleep with or marry other races. Then you have Leonard Howell, who is telling you that he hates white people. Then you have the king and queen crown same time. Then you have Naya Bingi, who is the spirit of a female warrior, female African warrior. You have Bobo Shanti. How does a white woman fit into any of that? Sasha, you wanted to respond to something Leighton said?
Yeah, I was just saying, when I mentioned earlier about freedom being one of the kind of foundations of the movement, I meant that in kind of a airy fairy philosophical manner, as in it is born out of pain, it's born out of slavery, and the ultimate aim for us was to be free from said atrocities. And then I went on to say that it got lost in translation, in that it's a free for all now, because a lot, what I heard, I'm going to digress slightly. What I hear a lot when I, well, I wouldn't say I've approached people who are in mixed race relationships, but it just kind of like, it's a happenstance, right? When I'm in these situations and I have these conversations with them, a lot of the rebuttal that I get, particularly from white women, is, which is ludicrous, by the way, Bob Marley is mixed race. Now, Keisha, me and you have had so many conversations about this. I'm not going to go into that, but obviously, we know that the situation with Bob Marley's mum is, that was pedophilia, because she was a child and it was a white man, and that was, that's something else. But they just seem to not consider that at all. So that's a lot of the rebuttal. And you also mentioned about the hippie movement and it turning into that. So when we look at the evolution, and it's inevitable that things are going to, you know, evolution is part of every kind of, even though it's not classed as a religion, but every religious, a religion around the world. We can look at Islam. There was a time where Shia Muslims didn't exist, for example. So it's inevitable that evolution is going to take place, you know. But I feel that part of the problem, part of the reason why this is happening, is because of the lack of uniformity. Wherever you don't have that, even though we have the foundations, as you've mentioned, we have Leonard Howell's teachings and we have Marcus Garvey's teachings, how often are we really leaning on that? I think it's
Well, that's the
become,
thing, Sasha. We can't lean on Leonard Howell's teachings anymore because it's inconvenient. Inconvenient to read Leonard Howell telling us not that Rasta that white people are evil whilst lying down with a white woman.
mm,
So of course we're not going to teach Leonard
yeah,
Howell's teachings,
yeah,
you know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So question Leighton. I hear a lot of discourse about the evolution of Rasta and that we should take this into consideration. Could we be confusing evolution with infiltration? Leighton, you have to unmute. I had muted you
Oh,
because,
I'm
yes.
sorry.
Hmm.
Yes, we 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 definitely could be confusing evolution and infiltration. There's something I want to say about evolution in this context. 100 years ago, perhaps there were no black billionaires. Now there are several. 100 years ago, perhaps black people couldn't vote. It's all about in the United States. Um, and now they can. And so there's been a lot of evolution of, if you will, uh, black, the black situation. But the black condition remains from 100 years ago until now, which is that black people collectively own something like 0.1% of the national wealth. Now, so it depends on the context in which you want to see evolution. Something can't evolve away from its core principles. Uh, if that is the case, then it can't be called an evolution. It has to be called something else. Um, Evolution is nuance, it is further growth, it is additions, it's culling, but it has to be have at its root the foundational principles. That's what it's evolving from. You can't evolve away from your core principles and speak of it as evolution. It must be something else.
Thank you, Leighton. Welcome, Ashley. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Excuse me. Good night, everybody. What an interesting topic. Um, as Leighton was speaking and about calling it something else, this other word came to mind, which is devolution. So the most popular application of that word is a transfer of power, usually within government, from one area to the other area. But another meaning of the word is the opposite of evolution. So we think of evolutions mostly as positive. Is a moving on from where you were. But devolution is regressive, is the opposite. It is becoming worse than what you were. Right. So I think there's that. The When I think about what racism is, some people tell you that is a pathology, and I am not 100% unsympathetic to that view, but it's a pathology that affects everybody, both the oppressor and the oppressed. And part of racism is the way that different people are portrayed. So if you look at the way in which Black women are portrayed, as not feminine, aggressive, masculine, um, the opposite of what would make a good partner, especially under Western patriarchal culture, then I think there's a lot of Black men in particular who buy into it. So they buy into it. And so if the image of what would make a good wife or a good partner, what is feminine, what is pure, what is good, is not Black women, then it becomes white women, and then other women, what I call the white approximates under that. So I think that's a part of it, but I also think there's an element of it, as I said, the pathology. It's widespread. If you look at the dating history of some of these white women, you will see a pattern, right? Whether it is conscious or unconscious, they not only go for Black men, but they go for a certain type of Black men. There's a whole other conversation about why that is. Uh, the We can't think reasonably that we're going to have a movement which, at its core, has many of those principles that you spoke about earlier, Keisha, about upliftment, about resistance, about self-love as a race, a- and believe that a racist system will simply allow that movement to grow in peace. There are going to be multiple forms of attack against it. And one of the most potent forms of attack is going to be through disruption of family systems. So those are the kind of top of mind thoughts that came to me. And I will continue to listen in.
Thanks, Ashley. Go ahead, Sasha. You wanted to respond to this idea of evolution.
Yeah, I stand in the fact that there has been an evolution. And the reason why I say this is because um, when you research the history of what we now call Rastafari, it existed in the Caribbean hundreds of years before Haile Selassie was even born. So when we consider the fact that, um, you know, Rasta evolved from, that's why you have the Nyabingi being the oldest sect. We have Obia, we have elements of Milism, we have Kumina, Revivalism, Poko. So you have all these spiritual systems that existed previous to Haile Selassie. So, and remember, we were in a situation as a voodoo soul myself, as you know, right? We were in a situation where we came to lands that, well, I'm not going to get into my genealogy, but as a majority, we came to land that we weren't, it wasn't our birthplace. We were forced to be there. So we had to be innovative. So maybe innovation may be another word that we could inject into this conversation. It's part and parcel of our particular journey. Um, so I can't remember what was it Leighton that was saying it. I can't remember what he was saying, but um I'll get back to that in a moment. But
But
my
you see, Sasha,
yeah.
the where we can accept
Mm-hmm.
that we've always, ever since we've landed on this plantation, we've always had a back to Africa movement. We've always incorporated aspects of our spirituality, drumming, all of that. There is no question. But to say that because there are aspects of that always present, that we always had Rastafari, my opinion is that I would disagree with that. Rastafari, the very name Rastafari is King Tafari, Haile Selassie. So it's a very specific combination, combining of all the things that were here 200, 300 years ago and narrowing it into a very specific movement. And I think we make a mistake when we try to say, like, a group of people practicing Obia, Kumina, Milism and having a back to Africa movement is the same as Rastafari. Rastafari evolved out of those very same tenets, sure, but it had a very specific message, a very specific deity, a very specific music, dress, way of being that I don't think we can say was around 200 years ago. But that's just my perspective. Leighton, what are your thoughts on this? Leighton, are you with us? Okay, maybe Leighton has stepped away. Ashley, how do you interpret this idea of Rasta being a movement that was around far before it had a name? Before we called it Rasta, it existed in essence. What are your thoughts on that?
So the first thing to say is that I don't feel like I'm qualified to give something definitive. It's
Jah
just an
Jah would never
opinion.
give the power to a ballad.
Exactly, that's one point. And a bald head would just know some basics, right? About the birth and the significant figures and all these things. And it's a shame. It's really a shame that this bald head spends so much time in school and have to learn these things outside school. But that's another conversation. But the idea of resistance, right, and also upliftment of love for race, These are ideas that are so common. If you study, as I know you have, Keisha, the civilizations that existed before the Europeans did what they did to Africa. The ideas are so common, and they were so common that people not even bat two eyelids about them. So if you say that we have genetic memory, and that irrespective of what was done to the ancestors who were taken to this part of the world, and it's not reasonable, I believe, whether scientifically or anthropologically, to believe that our culture and history carry itself still in religion, in food, in the way we look, in the colors that we like, in our mannerisms, even in our language, and not believe that ideas that that Howell put forth and other important figures like Garvey predated them. They must have grown up among people and a certain culture that guided them along the path, and or along a path that they later expressed, whether in their public speeches or in their writings. So just trying to figure it out logically, right? The notion that those things predated Rasta doesn't surprise me.
Thank you for that. I want to get back to white women, though, specifically. Um, I believe it was you, Ashley, who spoke about the when you look at the history of the dating history of some of these white women, they tend to choose very specific black men a lot of times, and it's usually the so-called more rebellious types. And if you observe, a lot of times, a lot of these white women are extremely sexually aggressive towards black men, towards Rastaman. And in many ways, it seems like a form of conquering. That is how the relationship looks. Even though on the surface, they put on, they oftentimes, they wear their long skirt and they talk about their king man and they seem visibly submissive. It is a form of domination because they know that they have diminished the meaning of Rastafari in terms of Howell Garvey. They know that in many ways this Rastaman can't really be taken seriously when he born Babylon and born white this and born that. So in so many ways, it's a form of domination that Rastamen seem to be willingly going ahead with. Have you noticed that, Ashley?
Yeah, I have. And again, even though we're on specifically talking about Rastamen, is all the black men who would be in those kind of relationships. And as a further corollary to that, I just maybe as a disclaimer, whether it is necessary or not, I don't necessarily think all interracial relationships have that dynamic. The thing about it is, whether consciously or unconsciously, a big part of racism is just cultural chauvinism. And what I've noticed from my knowledge and interaction with interracial couples, there's a certain psychology of a white woman who goes into many of these relationships, right? There is a belief. So first of all, she knows that by doing what she's doing, a lot of the people in her culture are looking on her away. So it's either moderate disapproval, slight disapproval, or extreme disapproval. Uh, but I think that in their heads, they believe that they can go into this culture that many people from their society or their cultural group or their ethnic group would consider inferior or bad, and become is almost like a female Rasta friend of mine said. use a description, and I found it so funny. She talk about the taming of the shrew, but the gender roles are inverted. So it's really the woman who doing the taming. And many times these relationships have that dynamic.
As you mentioned, the dynamics of interracial relationships. Leighton, is it possible to be pro-black while sleeping white?
Um, no. And I went back and forth with myself on this for a long time, but ultimately, if you think about children, everything becomes clear. And and yeah, it's okay. It's a funny thing. I watch a lot of pro sports, American sports. I shouldn't say a lot of it. I watch basketball mostly, and a lot of former players, black players, have their sons in the league, and in virtually every case, the son is uh, noticeably shades lighter than his father. Um, because, of course, the black athlete married a light skinned woman, if not white woman. And then the son now has a child who is noticeably lighter than the son himself because the son has married also white or near white. The other day I saw a picture of a brown, very light skinned brown guy, Josh Hart, with his wife and children. And I was taken aback. His wife is like chocolate black. And one of the children still come out brown, but another one of the children come out. But anyway, all of that to say that bleaching is one thing to wipe out the black race, but miscegenation is another. And so, um, if you're pro-black and sleeping white, eventually your great grandchildren will be white. So, what's pro-black about that?
Ashley, you mentioned this idea of, you know, many of these relationships are frowned upon from the white woman's side in terms of her social status, her family, etc. And whilst that is true in a lot of instances, I don't think we should underestimate the opportunism that is behind a lot of this coupling when it comes to white women, especially when you look at the reggae industry. Um, we have Cindy Breakspear talking about every year talking about how sleeping with Bob Marley was the best thing that ever happened to her in her life. They want to have a stake in Jamaica. They want to buy, a lot of them are actively buying up property, buying up land in Jamaica. They're moving into the wellness space. There's a popular vegan chef in Philly. I forget her name. Sasha probably can remind me.
Camilla
And
McDonald.
thank you. No, not Camilla, man. In Philadelphia, that white woman.
Oh, I remember. Yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, she goes around cosplaying as a Rasta empress, and she holds herself out as an expert in ital food and Rasta herbs. And most of what she says is just regurgitation of things that the Rasta community or the black people in Jamaica would have said, or Dr. Sebi. But she has amassed a serious following. She's married to a black Rasta man. She speaks about the fact that she's been to Jamaica, she learns from them. It's literally an old pirate in a skirt.
Sarah Scandone.
Sarah Scandone, thank you very much. An Italian woman operating a vegan restaurant in Philadelphia, wearing African print, red, green, and gold, locks tall to the sky, calling herself Empress, doing all manner of things. So they are not coupling with these Rasta men to their detriment. Only black women do that. Only black women actively marry down. Other races of women don't do that. When white women, quote unquote, marry down, they're doing it for their benefit. They know that they are planning a takeover. They know, as in the case of Ziggy and his wife, she's now the head of Tough Gang International. They know that they're placing themselves and their offspring in line to take over things. They play chess, not checkers. So, Sasha, you want to comment more on that?
Not really. I was just gonna. I mentioned in the chat they are literally, just to reiterate what you're saying, is that they are the dregs of their own communities, and they are shunned in their own communities, and they couldn't catch a break, and so they come around in this section, and they're placed on a pedestal. You know, we see it in popular culture as well with people like Amber Rose, and then all of a sudden they decide that maybe, I should be conservative. So now she's supporting Donald Trump. We see it with the Kim Kardashians. So this is why I say, although this is focused on Rasta, I think that it's essential that we really focus on the pathology of black men as a whole, because I think there lies the answers, for the pathology of those that identify as Rasta. That's all I have to say.
Before you mute Sasha, earlier Ashley spoke about this idea that femininity rather, is associated with whiteness. And so a lot of the appeal of white women to Rasta or other black men is because black women are portrayed to be masculine, or just by their very existence, they are the polar opposite to a white woman, and so automatically they are less appealing. But there's a school of thought which says that it is black men who have made us masculine, or that we have become masculine in our attempts to save black men. So is it feminine to be marching on the street, getting tear gassed and being all up in a policeman's face? Is it, are these things, is being constantly a part of the war, or supporting your black man, holding him down with 3 4 jobs?
There's a movement going on at the moment, where we literally just have to what's the word that I'm looking for? You know it, Keisha, where they're saying that black women should basically just, leave the room.
Yes.
you
Mm-hmm.
know there's a word for it. I can't remember what it is right now, and I'm of the sentiment that we should. I believe we had to be in these positions, yes. So there's no questioning the fact that our experience is extremely unique, and it has been extremely difficult. We didn't ask to be the leaders of our community behind closed doors. We didn't ask for this. We didn't volunteer that. We had to do that. You know, and so what then we have to consider what is femininity. What are we defining as femininity in order for me to really answer this question? Who said that? Was it Leighton or Ashley?
Ashley. Well, I don't think he was giving a definition of femininity, more so a perception that white women are
Are more
perceived as
feminine.
feminine, not
Hmm.
necessarily that they are.
Okay. When we look at the perception of white femininity, it is going to be complete the polar opposites of blackness, because just that our bodies are shaped differently. That's number one, and that's one of the reasons why we find that black women are often maybe body shamed publicly for wearing exactly the same outfit as a white woman, because they, nowadays they have asked because they're injecting themselves and exercising, some of them, and just some of them do have nice bodies. Yes, that's an anomaly. We're seeing it more regularly now, but in general, if you're here in the UK, they don't have that shape, right? And so we have to consider all of these things when we're talking about femininity, and we then have to also consider the psychology behind femininity and masculinity, and how the media has played a pivotal role in projecting those ideas into our psyches from when we were children. So there's many contributing factors to what we perceive to be feminine. But I believe, however, that black women are extremely feminine. I make reference. I don't know if he wants me to say this. My partner's in the room, by the way. But my I was telling him, my grandmother, she was a very fiery woman, and she successfully ran a number of businesses with her husband. And so she woke up early. If the car broke down, she would get out and do things that are generally considered masculine things to do. But at the same time, she would be sit down at her vanity mirror in the mornings at 6 o'clock, and put on her red lipstick, paint her nails red, always immaculate, hair curled. So if we're considering those aspects of femininity, looking attractive for your partner, eating well, keeping yourself healthy, I feel that generally speaking, that black women have always been doing that. So I reject the idea that black women are not feminine. And before I finish, I just want to say that I've spoken to someone who identifies as a Rasta recently, and his reasoning behind why he would deal with a white woman specifically is because the black women, and this is very this is not something it's not, it doesn't relate to England. It relates to Jamaica, where he is living in Jamaica at the moment, that those women in that community do not want him. So that's another thing that we may have to consider within this conversation, that the average black woman in Jamaica will not want a Rasta. And then we have to consider why she doesn't want a Rasta. So I just wanted to, not in defense of men, but we have to obviously be non-biased in our approach and our thinking, and consider the other reasons why Rasta men are not dealing with black women.
Thank you for that, Sasha. I want to read some comments in the chat from Lioness. Well, 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 I think now is the time to raise the question of whether it's possible for a non Black, non Caribbean person to authentically adapt or become Rastafari. Because the real issue is there are a number of non Black individuals that are being sanctioned by Black Rastafari and who are being allowed to be privy to the ways and sacred teachings of Rastafari. Yes, Lioness, and before you came in, we actually discussed a bit about, what is Rastafari, whether it has evolved into a hippie movement or whether it has in fact been infiltrated. Because we do see where Rasta has opened its arms, quote unquote, to receive these non-black people and allow them to call themselves Rastafari. There is a woman called Jamexi. She is in the music business, in the Jamaican music business. If you go on her social media profiles, you will see videos of all the prominent Rasta artists, Sizzler, Jamaican, Iway, who burn the hottest fire. And there are individual videos of these artists saying, link Jamexi, a white woman full of tattoo, for all business concerning me, for all business concerning my music. And I just, even before I get to the stage of the music and the representation, I wonder how Rasta sit back and allow a white woman to call themselves Jah. How is it not sacrilegious for a white woman or a white man, but we're talking about white women, to refer to themselves as Jah? So you raise a valid question, Lioness, because Rasta is opening its arm. Rasta is part of its own dilution. Leighton, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I agree with you 100%. I had initially on mic to respond to something Sasha said at the end, but it's kind of slipping me at the moment. Oh, she's talking about the many reasons why a Rasta would turn to non-black women, especially if his own black women don't want it. And presumably, no Rasta women want it as well. And I have known women that bleach their skin, and when asked why, they say no man wants them with black skin. Meantime, there's like at least three men begging them, begging them, begging them, don't bleach them skin. So when it comes to it, it's just a matter that she want to bleach her skin, just like how these Rasta men want white women. So they will find, or I mean, I've seen it with gay men too who are trying to pass as straight. They find a problem with every single woman. And, who is to tell a man what his preference is or is not? You know? Um, and, maybe the women don't want him for a good and valid reason. You know, maybe he smell like he need more natural soap. I don't know. The long and the short of it is that to use that as a reason why he would have to turn to non-black woman. And every man that endorses another man turning to non-black women, or they could see how it could happen, either as a non-black woman, or is looking a non-black woman, or is craving non-black woman. Have pictures of non-black women save up. They just, and it would be better if they were honest and just said, you know, that's how I feel about it.
I think that's what it is. I think it's down to a question of dishonesty. When you're going to say the women in your community don't like Rasta, no, you mean the women that you like. The women that you like, the women that you find attractive. The women, because low key, most Rasta men are not attracted to Rasta women, black or white. Low key, they want that girl that society is going to big them up for, give them a stripe for. And those girls don't want Rasta man. Those girls want a man who can carry them to uncorked, get their nails done.
That's true. Sorry, I just had to interject because we had this conversation. Because they literally want the hot girls, and then they'll pretend, yeah, that they want the empress with the, she don't do her nails, she doesn't do anything like that, but
Lies.
make it make sense. It's
And I want
lies,
to
you know.
respond to Date Mar. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, Date Mar, who says, "Show us the Rasta woman. They are limited." Well, first of all, I'm going to piggyback on something Sasha said. If you are a Rasta woman and we accept that the foundational principles of Rastafari is blackness, then find a black woman. Find a black woman who is pro black. Find a black woman with natural hair. Find a black woman who eats natural. How do you jump from Boy, I don't see enough Rastafari woman in my age group or in with my interest. To a white woman, you couldn't find a black Muslim, a black natural girl, a black yogi, a black naturalist. How many girls walking around with locks and Marcus Garvey philosophies in their bags? And if you're really about that life, which you ought to be, based on the history of Rastafari, there are many countries in the world that are filled with black women, filled with Rasta women. And if you are leaders as you say you are, then bring the daughter, bring the ayata. It reminds me of an interview I saw recently of Rasta singer Janine. And she was talking about, the fact that she had given birth recently and that she traveled to Africa to meet her partner. And I think to myself, number one, how many Rasta women could get away with partnering with white women at the rate at white with white men at the rate that their male counterparts do? How many of them, like Janine, who is a Rasta, who is an artist, who may have said, we don't know, I may not be able to find a partner in Jamaica, a suitable Rasta man in Jamaica. She went to Africa. You're telling me Rasta man who talk about the Back to Africa movement, Garvey, repatriation, reparation, Ethiopia, can't jump on a plane to Cuba, to Trinidad, to Barbados, to Ethiopia, to Tanzania, to Ghana, Nigeria, Congo to find a black wife? Come on. Ashley, am I being too harsh?
No, I don't think so. The thing about it is the a few weeks ago I was having this conversation with a group of male friends, and the same thing that we were talking about hypergamy a while ago of mostly women seeking partners of a certain status. I'll tell you a little secret that a lot of men are also groupies. The
That's an
kind
open secret, Ashley. We knew
yeah
that.
is one that we don't like to acknowledge, but it is, if you see the way that some men select who they say is a serious partner, there's no other explanation for it. And so if it is, one of my friend was talking about how his mother and his father met, and his father, when he started dating him, telling him, listen, when when I got your mother, I recognize that I myself wasn't a 10, so I didn't try to go for nothing, and it don't mean that I love your mother any less. The point, and he said it while the mother was in the room throwing things at him, so it's obvious that the parents themselves had this conversation. But I say all this to say that some of these men have a certain type that they want, and when they can't access that, this is a thing called leapfrogging. So they go beyond what they feel the social hierarchy would have given to them, and leapfrog to a white woman, and in their heads is even in a better position. So the concept of going to Brazil and getting a Afro Brazilian, or or Colombia and getting a Latino who is black is so wild and out there, right? When they in their head they have an even better option available to them. So it's excuses really. And the thing about a pathology, if you try to use, Ayn Rand had this expression, and she said that those who deny reason cannot be conquered by it. If you try to use logic and deconstruct a pathology, you will never get anywhere in your understanding because there's no real rationale behind it.
Whoa, that's interesting, Ashley. Dietmar is continuing in the chats. Let me read some of his comments. He says, "Have you tried dating women in Jamaica? Requirements might be higher than one can afford." You know, I'm just again. I'm just Dietmar. I've sent you an invite to come up and speak because I'm just not seeing this rationale as being acceptable. I think a lot of it is rooted in laziness and deep resentment of Black women and the refusal of Black men from all walks of life to improve themselves, to become worthy partners for the Black women they want, or, as Ashley said, to accept the Black women that they can attract at their level. Where we have, as Cartel said, buy what you can afford. I hate to use that term in reference to women, but if you understand me, if you are refusing to improve yourself to attract the type of mate that you think you are deserving, then satisfy with the ones that you have. And certainly, unless I am wrong, Date Mar, you can correct me. But if I am a Rasta man, I'm thinking even the worst Black woman is better than a white woman. Go ahead, Date Mar. You have to unmute your mic. It should be on the right hand side of your screen. So go ahead and unmute
Okay,
and join the
there we go.
conversation.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. First of all, but you just said even the worst black is better than a white I mean, a man
Absolutely.
of
As
any
a
nature.
Rasta man, as a man who is following Leonard Howell, Marcus Garvey, I would rather be single or with the worst black woman than with a white woman.
I mean, I guess if one chooses to stick to what they believe in, then I would say that. But from my standpoint, I have seen Rastaman, regular bald head, just regular decent people who is a struggle for them. It's a struggle for them, for men in general, because
Struggling what
one,
way?
in terms of finding a partner, finding a proper partner, one that is, let's say, cooperative, willing to work together to achieve something. You understand? Everybody wants everything ready made now. So that the minute you talk to someone, that's that's what you're hearing. As a man, the first thing you talk to, that's the first thing you're hearing about. It's there's no, and it's not that black women have lost their femininity. I believe they were forced to be a bit more masculine, but not necessarily fully masculine. And I believe the
Forced
masculine
by
feels of a
forced by black men.
no, not by black men. The same force that forced the black man to be how he is today is the same force that forced the black woman to be where she's at today. And that is the reason why we're having this dilemma. Because if we take it all the way back to the point where things changed for black people overall, which is slavery, think about how it got them in line. What they would do, as a matter of fact, you have one named Willie Lynch. Willie Lynch used to be one of those masters that they would transport to different plantations to break the slaves. And when they break them, what they did was they find the strongest, biggest black slave, right? The shiniest one. And they will do things like sodomize him, whip him down to him last toenail. You understand? Break him down in front of the entire community so they can understand the black man has no power here. And then what they would do is, yes, they had female slaves in the field, but the women were got some leniencies because the slave master would like to sleep with the slave woman. And
Sir,
again,
I'm
for
going
the
to
black
have to
man,
stop you. I'm gonna have to stop you. This narrative that being raped is
it
somehow
it's not
lenient on black
fully.
women. Black men need to
No,
stop this
no, 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 no,
treachery. Stop
no.
betraying your mother.
It's not betray. How would you betray? It's not betraying your mother. It's just talking about the systematic
How can
way of how we
being
got to this
how
point.
can being effectively chained to a white man's bed, a bed wench,
Hmm.
and being repeatedly
No, no,
raped?
no, not.
How can that
I'm not.
come with benefits?
I've moved from that point to the point where it became a point where the men were still being broken down. Meanwhile, if some of the times, if not a lot of the times, when they would have child for that slave master, they were also placed above the male slave. It's not saying that they were shown as a wife. It's just saying that their position was also above the male slave, the field slave, which was mostly men. And even when you come out of slavery and you go into, say, segregation, it was still the same. Not saying that all of us as black people didn't experience this, that they didn't have the same um, prejudices and racism against them. It's just saying that the black man had to be kept down to break up the black family because the black man was at the point the backbone of the black family. And
Black man
over
was
Can
never
years,
the
can
backbone of the black
can I
family.
say something
Leighton,
though?
jump in, please.
was
Just a
I
minute,
never.
Datemar.
hear
Just a minute. Hold that thought, Datemar. We'll get back to you.
Okay, okay.
Go ahead, Leighton.
yeah, I hear so many black men, passport bros, manosphere men talking about like this is what I'm hearing echoed in this. Boy, we can't find any black sisters down with the cause, etc., etc. Cooperative and feminine and blah 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 blah. And it's I have found or I have observed, and I haven't observed much, but from from what I've observed, the men who end up with these non-black women, they don't really end up with submissive non-black women. And even where the woman is, as Kishi said, shows signs of submissiveness. Like she not do like the way what the black girl and I wear short skirt. She do like a proper empress and keep her skirt length down to her ankle, but she's really stooping to conquer, which is uh, which is the real dynamic there. So when they say like they need cooperative women, if all the white women were feisty, they would say they need feisty women. What they really need is white women, and they need to be honest about it. I come upon many. Okay, I I, I know many women, and in my life I've been around many women. Never a white woman. Brown, very light brown Jamaicans, but for the last say 20 years, almost exclusively black women. The blacker, the better. So my last children's mother is a black woman. That's my preference. Now, if she is unruly at times, own way at times, tempestuous at times, you know, what is the nature of a woman of any color? You know, when they say, oh, that's why them have to take out the woman them and stone them and because them unruly and them this and them that. Every year they stoning women. What that mean? The woman them don't learn from the stoning. People are people. Let people be, man. And I know a lot of very cooperative black women, very cooperative black women who get whose cooperation or cooperativeness is abused um unconscionably. And that's the mildest word I can use that is accurate. Unconscionably by all manner of black men. So, whatever.
Detmar, you want to respond?
Uh, sure. Um, I don't speak from a point of let's say disappointed in black women or from that perspective. I've just noticed a lot, and I'm a black man. Uh, don't date white women. Black women are my preference, and quite preferably, it don't matter what shade to me. But from all that I've seen, almost every single male that I know uh, are having issues. Every woman I know is having issues, or from what I've seen so far. And a lot of it is just miscommunication, misunderstanding. The men don't understand the women definitely don't understand the man also. And at some point, we're going to have to come to the point where we stop for a second, remove all the systematic narratives, and look at ourselves and talk to each other and understand where it is coming from. And that little communication gap is where we're having the majority of the issues. So that's why I took it all the way back to slavery to show that, there has been a almost like a mantle over us that keeps separating us to the point where we're starting to become spiritually disconnected. And that's the part that hurt me, you know.
Can I just
Thank you
interject?
for that, Detmar. Sasha?
Yeah, I just wanted to interject. I think one of the contributing factors towards this communication issue is that whenever we're met with this type of conversation, we always go back to slavery. And I think when we start doing that, it, in a sense, takes away the responsibility of the now. I think it's important when we're talking about relationships. Yes, we understand that there are psychological elements that will contribute to the current condition. We have no doubt that this is a contributing factor. However, we know that we're in a group of relatively and very intelligent human beings. And so I think when we are having this conversation, maybe if we focus on what the issues we are um, experiencing now, we won't be met with the wall. Because going back to the communication aspect of what you were saying, that you'll meet this wall because it is a regurgitated rhetoric that we consistently hear as Leighton, I believe it was, or was it actually in the manosphere? And this is one of the issues that we have. So let's let what is the problem in the now? And then we can have that conversation as it pertains to Rasta men and white women and just black men in general.
I agree that a lot of the conversation should address the modern day issues. I don't agree, however, that we can address them without Sankofing. I'm not sure why it appears, perhaps I'm wrong, but it appears that we may be the only group of people that tries to address our social issues without looking at our history. But I do agree with Sasha when she says the rhetoric coming from the manosphere is a regurgitation and repetition of the same thing. The problem, though, for me, is not that we are talking about slavery or history together as black men and black women. My problem is that the history is being edited to fit a narrative of patriarchy, a lie. It's an excuse, and it's an avoidance of accountability and responsibility from black men. And it's embarrassing, quite frankly, because for one thing, if we agree that the average black woman is uncooperative, she wants you to be ready made, or as Lioness pointed out in the chat, black women have higher standards. We're not as quote unquote freaky. We want our men to be spiritual, family oriented, etc. How do you find yourself with a white woman? White women are not more cooperative than black women. That is not proven to be true. The opposite is actually true, right? And then this notion that black men were the backbone of society. There is no society where the man is the backbone. There is society where the man is the oppressor. There is no society where the people who birth the children, suckle the children, gestate the children, raise the children, grow the food, tend to the garden, tend to the agriculture, the man can be the backbone. That's misguided patriarchy that the manosphere refuse to let go of. And they refuse to let go of this notion that the black woman has been prioritized by white supremacy. And so I think part of what the black man has to come to grips with and get therapy with for amongst each other, because I agree with Sasha. I don't think the black woman should do any more labor, emotional labor, where that is concerned. They need to come to grips with the fact that what's happening in the know is on their backs to fix. It's on their backs to fix their community. What's happening in the know is not the fault of the black woman. She was raped. She wasn't preferred. So, a lot of these narratives are simply not true, and we need to do away with them. Ashley, any thoughts on this issue? Ashley may have stepped. Oh, sorry.
Right. The my internet is kind of acting up. Um, boy, there's where do we even start? The patriarchy. I remember reading this thing by the now dead anthropologist slash sociologist Bell Hooks, right? And and she was talking about dysfunction in relationships, and it was later on in her life because a lot of particularly more conservative black male thinkers had criticized her earlier writings as attacks on black men. And one of the things that she said is that in other cultures, men and women are raised to be compatible with each other. Whereas in most of the cultures that were affected by slavery and colonialism, the opposite is true for Black people. The way we're raised, it results in a lack of compatibility, right? And so a big part of propaganda is to misdirect our attention away from the cultural patterns that whether you will want to say they come from slavery or not, maybe is not the most important aspects of the debate. Maybe the most important part is how do the current patterns affect us now, and what will the implication of it continuing be in the future, right? So if we accept that there's a dysfunction, irrespective of where it comes from, then and we also accept that the role of propaganda is to take our attention away from those things and often to the symptoms or to the drama, especially in the social media age. I think we have to be very concerned about what we do about the pattern, and is there any possibility that we can do things to break it, so that we encourage compatibility, because that is the only way we're going to disrupt the current path that we're on.
Important words, Ashley. Thank you for that. You know, Leighton, I want to talk about this idea of compatibility because it's often raised by a lot of black men in terms like corporate cooperation and submission, and this being why they can't couple successfully with black women, whether Rasta or otherwise. But how much of what they're asking for is unreasonable and too demanding? Like when I hear black men talk about the ways in which they want their woman to cooperate, they want to be the leader. They want you they want to be able to tell their women what to do, and she listen without questioning. That's certainly my view. Is that a distorted view?
Um, to be honest with you, I get so tired of this argument because none of the men that tell you this can point to any white woman who is submissive in any relationship with any friend that they have. None can. So what this and this submission, I mean, uh, um, look, I I get it. You don't want somebody who argues for argument's sake, is trying to one up you, is trying to compete with you. I get that. But there is a long, along the continuum from ungovernable to submissive is a lot of way steps along the way. How do you get that? You need you need a woman to help you earn, you need a woman to raise your children after you're dead, you need her to no give her everything where you earn for, or make an next man come in and what have you. You need all of these things from a submissive woman. She said that's too much work for you. The man them just need to stop behave like picnic, to be honest with you. That's my view.
Ashley, how realistic is it for the modern day black man, Rasta or not, to expect that their women be submissive in the traditional sense, which I'm assuming that's what men mean a lot of times when they say submission. You can correct me.
The me no know if me can correct you. Let me be honest with you. When I hear this conversation about submission, I am alarmed, right? And I I don't even know how to engage with this concept, right? Because the all right. So I always talk about some experiences. The few weeks ago, we're kind of counseling a friend of ours, um, because he was having a relationship counseling. So it's a counseling without that as the label, so that him can feel comfortable, right? And what it occurred to me that this concept of a male being the leader of the house, he was struggling with it because of the woman that he was dating. And I didn't know, there are a good couple, but they have their issues. And I was struggling with telling him that the the problem is that for his worldview, he has the wrong partner, because when you pick up this woman, she was doing all the things that you're now complaining about. And also, that is part of what attracted you to her, right? So when you talk to men and they start going on about submission, they mean different things. They mean, some mean women not overtly challenging their thought process or what they want to do. Some mean women accepting their decisions without question. Some mean showing deference to them about decisions, especially in public. Some mean women not even being heard, but just being seen. Some men mean different things, right? For me personally, this concept of submission alarmed me. Because if when I'm in a relationship is with another adult, right, and I want to be comfortable that an adult can take adult decisions and face tough situations and not crumble in the face of tough, whether it's interpersonal or other situations, right? So as a anytime I hear the word submission, whether it's from a man or a woman, to me personally, it set off some alarm bells.
Yes, certainly. But I think one of the aspects that we haven't discussed it when it comes to Rasta men is this idea of the Solomonic view of themselves and religion, Christianity, or Abrahamic religions. When you think of Solomon, Solomon is revered. His the figure of Solomon, his behavior, the fact he had many wives from many nations. Part of how Rastaman view things is that as a king and as the first man, quote unquote, because they think the first person on earth was a black man, not the black woman's bones that they found in Ethiopia. The first man, you are entitled to every woman. It's that Solomonic, chauvinistic arrogance that they have. And so it's not being treacherous to Rastafari by dating a white woman or a non black woman. You're just exercising your right as a king. And a king supposed to, I mean, I've heard Rasta men say this, that they want to spread their seeds across many nations because that's a show of their power. That's how they're getting the power. I've even heard Rasta men say that's how they get revenge on Massa by sleeping with white men, by courting curly locks. You heard Junior Jacob Miller talk about your father is a pork chop in the song Curly Locks. It's like a fu to the white father, the proverbial white father, or the white massa. So part of the pathology is that they think that they are kings with no kingdoms. They are kings without a kingdom. And which is why I was saying to date Mar earlier that so much of the work that black men have to do, they're avoiding it by living in this fantasy hotep land. Leighton, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you completely, Keisha.
Um, I think that black men, especially men who are Rastafarians or profess to be Rastafarians and therefore are supposed to have a Pan-Africanist, self-determinative, uh, nation-building sense. Nelson Mandela didn't have a submissive woman. If a great man does not require submission from his woman, why should a lesser man do so? In what matters do you wish her to submit to you in? What if her expertise is greater than yours in matters of domesticity, in matters of financial management, in matters of organization, administration, whatever the case may be? What if her skill or experience is superior to yours? How are you going to lead her? Eh, I, I, at what point is it a partnership? I just don't understand them, to be honest.
I think just the very nature of being a woman, many men think that she cannot be competent, more competent in any area than a man. But Lioness raised an important point in the chat. I'm confused. Black Rasta women have been traditionally, quote unquote, submissive, and that's true. That's true. If you think of what traditionally submissive women are supposed to be, especially under a patriarchal religion like or levity like Rastafari, um, they tend to fall in line with that. There are Rasta men, Rasta elders right now who have been married to two Rasta men, two Rasta women for decades. There are Rasta women who have yielded to their men to take charge of the business, take charge of the restaurant, because in some Rasta men don't believe that women should cook. Um, we know in Bubba Hill there are rules about segregating the women when they are on their menstruation cycle. You know, they are widely held as the leaders in these communities, as the person who takes charge. King man is how they are referred to. So, unless it is Lioness that the men are correct, that it's not that Rasta women aren't submissive, it's just that they don't exist anymore. That could be it. Lioness is responding. Let me read some of her comments. I know they don't want black women. So, for all the black men who want submissive women, it's black Rasta women. Yet, this category of women are notoriously not properly partnered. So why are black men tripping over themselves? Why aren't, hold on, sorry. So why are black men tripping over themselves to marry the submissive black woman, black Rasta woman? Okay, yes, she meant why aren't black men tripping over themselves? Well, Lioness, they're saying that they don't exist. They exist in theory only, or they existed back in the days. So Peter Tosh had a submissive Rasta woman. Bob Marley had a submissive Rasta woman. And mind you, the way we see Rita submit to Bob, that is their ideal, That is what they want. Submission in the form of abuse. So they go out and they impregnate the white woman, impregnate other women, possibly verbally abuse you, abandon you for months. Not saying Bob Marley did this, but I'm saying the ideal that many of them seem to want when they talk about having a submissive Rasta woman doesn't seem to honor the woman's dignity at all. Ashley, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I agree with you. This is why I was saying about submission. When you start to delve deeper into what some of them mean by that, what you encounter is a lot of men struggling with their sense of manhood, but also some men with some very deep um, inferiority issues in relation to other men. And when men are struggling in that way, is often women that take the brunt of the abuse. Uh, the Leighton raised some good points about, the character of a woman versus a man and what some men really mean by submission. A female friend of mine who is a Rastafarian told me something years ago, and she said that a leader never needs to say that he's the leader, and it's the same concept with submission, right? When a woman feels secure in her womanness or her femininity, then submission becomes a non-issue.
Thank you. Question for you, Leighton. Do you think we could see the reverse happening with this issue and Rasta be taken seriously? In other words, could we see Rasta women coupling with white men all over the world, being impregnated by white women and still call themselves Rasta? What do you think would happen if all Rasta women started to marry and be impregnated by white men? Leighton? Ashley, you want to take that one?
I was just, you know, again, I was making a joke in the chat that the amount of fire that would chant, the ocean do have enough water to put it out. The women under patriarchy, whether we're talking about black or white, women just don't get the same pass that men get. Um, so yeah, I think it would be more controversial and more of a topic of conversation. But I can also foresee we live in some strange times too. And I can foresee a future in which a white billionaire get up one day and say, "I think him need a Rastafarian wife and marry her."
Dacia in the chat says, or asks rather, can they afford multiple women? Solomon could afford it. They just don't want Rasta women. They want white women or light skinned girls, light skinned mixed girls, or those with long weaves. Boy, it's a sad state of affairs, and part of why we can never really get far in terms of this discussion is because there is so much denial, so much dishonesty when it comes to this topic. There are always these excuses about what black men, women are not doing. I remember the days when Rastaman would take pride in saying, "I'ma bring the daughter, I'ma carry her, go Ital's shop, I'ma show her certain things." He would lead in that way that, he felt a sense of pride in showing his woman the light. And that's simply not happening now. The pride that they seem to be getting is by being a renter dread, a glorified renter dread. Because maybe you're not waiting on at Ocheria's pier for a German national to come and carry you to dates and drink jelly and eat cane. But essentially, that's what you're doing. When at the end of the day, your white wife and her offspring has all the rights to your music, owns your land, is cosplaying in colors of your ancestral home. I mean, it's embarrassing. Dacia says, let's talk about the Rasta artists with the girls with the weaves in their video. They don't have black women or Rasta women in it. Well, I think it's an issue across the board. I don't think before you even get to white women, I don't see that the majority of Rasta men really revere, love, honor Rasta women or black women. That is why I opened with that song by Jacob Miller to show you that it's not a modern thing. It's not a chronics thing. It's not a Jesse Royal thing. This is something that has been happening from Lee Scratch Perry days. That they're just not physically attracted to black women. That's what I'm saying, Dacia, as Dacia says in the chat. So they need to just be honest and stop telling lies on black women. That's all we're asking. And also, if you're if Rasta is going to evolve to the point, quote unquote, evolve to the point where the black woman is no longer relevant, then call yourself something else. Don't call yourself by in the name of the king. Don't call yourself in the name of Haile Selassie. You insult Empress Menen. Leighton, are you back with us? Okay, I'm not seeing where Leighton is back with the conversation. But we're coming up on the 2 hour mark in any event. Leighton, I see you removing your mic, but I'm not sure if you're having technical difficulties.
I'm sorry, Keisha. Call came in, and since then, I'm barely able to hear what you're saying. But I think I caught the last part of what you're saying, and it's really back to the treachery thing. And you know, um, I just hope black women avoid the gaslighting. You know how they used to tell black people say the reason why police was targeting them was cause them pants did too low and them did have on the hoodie and them dressed like thug and gangster. And then we see so many people, so many images, so many stories of clean, cut, well groomed, khaki wearing black men slaughtered same way. And so this thing that, oh, if you just look this way, if you just behave this way, if you just then we would find you more what? Who look more feminine? Rita or what's she named there? Beauty queen. I mean, argument done.
There are many Rastas who would disagree with you, Leighton. There are many Rastas who came out in support of the fact that Bob Marley was in love with Cindy and wasn't really in fact, the main ones that are pushing this propaganda that Bob Marley didn't really love Rita, that Cindy was the love of his life. The main ones are Rasta. I think Skill Cole was in an interview saying that he's writing a book. I believe I saw a clip. I stand to be corrected. But I recall seeing a clip from Skill Cole saying that he's writing on a book about the great love affair between Bob Marley and Cindy Breakspear. You know, what Brastamen romanticized that relationship like is, you would think is Selassie and Empress Menen. That is how they talk about Cindy and Bob. Like Cindy was the greatest thing to happen to Bob. Give thanks to her sons for at least making some attempt to rewrite that narrative. So we're going to wrap up now. And Tajay says Cindy's a dangerous girl. Boy, Cindy would have no power save and except for those that black men have given to her and black people have given to her. If Cindy was the wife and Rita was the side chick, mm-mm-mm, you would find out. You would find out what time a clock a strike, as my granny would say. But in closing, I'm just going to open the floor for those of you who are not um, with a mic. You can just write your closing remarks in the chat. But I'm gonna ask Leighton or Ashley to go ahead with their closing remarks before we wrap up.
Well, let me go ahead first before my phone gives any more trouble. I'm thankful for you for bringing so many perspectives uh, on this issue, to bear on this issue, and for educating me in particular as to how deep seated and pervasive this pathology is. And I think it really reflects poorly on Rastafarianism um, in that aspect. Uh, that's it.
Thank you, Leighton. I appreciate you. Ashley, what are your final thoughts on the issue?
In general, again, I would echo what Leighton said about creating this forum, because oftentimes these topics are important, but in the media that we have today, what we have is a lot of fluff and froth, posing as serious issues. So spaces like this become even more important. I don't want to really end it on a depressing note, right? Because I always feel like if it wasn't for Rastafarianism, so many of us on this part in this side of the world wouldn't have any sense of ourselves as whether you want to say black or African peoples. So to get this insight into um an aspect that is not so good is not a good feeling. But irrespective of that, what I will do is just focus on the relationships that I know and I see that are positive relationships in the community that give a is kind of our beacon, our role models for what a good and productive and wholesome relationship can be. Because that is the foundation, as we were talking earlier, for a family structure that kind of shift away from the negative patterns. So thanks again, Kish, and thanks to the other contributors.
Thanks so much, Ashley, and thanks for reminding all of us why this discussion is so important. Many people think that when you talk about Rasta in this way, it's right. It's coming from a disdain of Rasta. It's quite the opposite. It's quite the opposite because we see Rasta as so important and as such a powerful pillar in the consciousness of Black people, especially in the Western world, that we hold it to a very high standard and we want to see it maintain whatever little influence it has and in a positive way. K dot, you join us as we're giving our final comments, but I'm always happy to see you here. So even though we're wrapping up, I still your first comments can also help to close it out. What are your thoughts on this issue?
Well, I think it's sad that, Rasta men hugging up the females of the down presser. But, I, at the same time, I can't really dictate who a man should love. That is the other part of the thing. I can't dictate who should a man should love or, what him should benefit from any relationship. It's all up to him. So, I that's where it stopped with me. That's where it stopped with me. It not helping our race at all that we do these things. You know,
So you think a man can be pro-black and love a white woman?
that's quite what you call it. Um, it kind of conflicting to me. It's very conflicting to me. It's very conflicting to me. You
Why?
can't.
You have dreams of dating white women?
I remember I used to before I got conscious. I used to. I used to. You know. But because I get little educated now, it can't be like that. Because I'm educated now, I would expect that, coming and seeing the Rastaman and who Rastaman represented to me, that this is the person that remind us, is the memory of Africa. This is the man that, these are the people that talk about Africa, even under them down pressure and coral gardens and otherwise. These people remind us of who we are, and to see some of them be like this is very conflicting to me, you know. So I to get in to be conscious and get involved in that depth of a relationship with a white woman. I say nothing, I can't say nothing. But at the same time, I cannot determine, I can't tell a man who to love and who not to love. I don't know him personal traumas, I don't know him personal life, I don't know what happened to him. But it's sad for me. It's sad for me.
All right, K dot. Thank you.
Mm.
Thank you for that.
Well,
Dacia, what you have for us?
Hi, good night. I just, as he spoke, I remember a statistics that I saw. I don't know how I ended up on it. Blacks are, in terms when they research interracial couples, they found that it was mostly black men that were marrying white women of all the races. So there is, I believe, and you mentioned that we have to look at it from as far back as slavery, and somebody brought up the fact that black women, even though they were being raped, and it's interesting how he coined it. Even though they were being raped, black men saw it as the woman being in a better position than he was. That is supporting the point that we're making, that black men see coupling with white as a step up. That is the root of it. And they find white women, or those that they see as being close to that, as more attractive. It is very glaring in our society when you look at the successful black men, some of the successful black men who they decide that they want to have children with or marry. So this is even beyond, Rasta men. It's a black men issue. I remember even going when I was in high school, and the boys they so it's I don't know. I honestly I don't know where it's coming from, but it's there. It's the Indian girl. It's the girls with the straight hair, and girls that had kinky hair were not seen as attractive.
Yes, they say. In fact, every time I hear this idea that black women are not feminine, I think it's just code for what they really want to say out loud, but they can't say out
They
loud.
don't have straight hair
Yeah, we just yeah, I mean, come on, why can't we be honest? That's my problem. I do have an issue with a man saying I love this girl or I love that girl, but
I like
why are
straight
you
hair
why are you telling lies on black women in order for you to carry out your fetishes?
because for every behavior that they claim they're looking for in a white woman, there are black women out there that display that. So if they're looking for submissiveness, whatever description they have, there are black women out there that they can find that are like that. So they're just making up excuses. There's always black men always have an excuse as to why they are not dating black women. Then you hear them come with the whole 50-50, and they explain it why, and everybody is giving black women um advice as to why they're single, but they're not looking within themselves to see that the problem starts there. There's something in them that they need to address, and we're not going to be able to move forward until they start being honest and move away from that.
In
and
our
and
race,
and
if you're a light skinned man in our race, they call you pretty. They say you look like a girl. If you're a dark skinned man, they say
hence
you look manly, you look rough. So
uh,
therefore,
there you
a
go.
dark skinned woman, a black woman, is automatically, just by the texture of her hair, her nose, her skin, she's automatically masculine. It doesn't matter what she do. It doesn't matter if she lie down on the ground and allow you to wipe your feet on her, which is what they want, by the way. It doesn't matter if you do that. They will still see you as masculine because you don't have what Jacob Miller calls curly locks. You have kinky locks. And
and
that bother them.
And Keisha, their friends look up to them when they marry those women or date those women. So that's even supported even more. But they need to just be honest. Just be honest. The black men sing about the black men or Rasta men sing certain songs, and when you look at the woman up in the video, I've been saying this from I was younger, and it was so confusing to me. I say, how am I sing about that? And it's a girl in the video with weave. It was confusing to me. So they just need to be honest, and we will not. Oh, a point that I wanted to raise. Maybe there is some value in when other races do arranged marriages. I was having this discussion with a friend of mine, and I'm saying maybe black people need to do that because what we're doing, in my view, doesn't seem like it's working. The other races seem to be have their thing together a bit more than we do.
Yes, yes, certainly that's something that we could look into. Well, I would certainly arrange a marriage with my children and the offspring of a progressive black person, because especially if I have a daughter, I'm not leaving her to the fangs of misguided black boys, unloved black boys that want to blame their current situation in life on the fact that black women were raped on the plantation. That's just beyond treacherous and pathetic. So again, thank you all. I will not keep you any longer. It's been 2 hours and 50 minutes of riveting reasoning. I think we will do a part two on this. So thanks to everyone. Have a great Sunday. See you next week. Same time, same place on the Truth Gangster podcast.